At the Raisina Dialogue in New Delhi, a US official made a striking statement. The United States, he said, would not repeat the same mistake it made with China 20 years ago when dealing with India. But what was this mistake? Did the US accidentally create its biggest geopolitical rival? And if US refuses to repeat the same mistake, can India still rise as a global power? To understand this statement, let's go back to the 1990s. Hi everyone, this is Shubhi and welcome to Shubhi Speaks. After the end of Cold War, the US emerged victorious and became the dominant power in the world. This victory also meant the dominance of liberalism and globalization. The US believed that if China became deeply integrated into the global economy, it would eventually become a responsible stakeholder in the international politics. And this approach led to one of the most important decisions in the modern economic history. In 2001, China joined the World Trade Organization. This opened global markets to Chinese manufacturing. Western companies shifted production to China. Foreign investments flowed into Chinese factories. And within 2 decades, China emerged as the manufacturing hub of the world. But instead of political liberalization, China leveraged globalization to strengthen economic and strategic power. Today, it competes with the US in several sectors, including the AI, 5G, electric vehicles, and semiconductors. It also controls a significant portion of the global supply chain for critical minerals and rare earths. At the same time, geopolitical tensions have also intensified in the regions like the South China Sea and Taiwan. The US did not expect China to become a peer competitor so quickly. For many policymakers in Washington, the conclusion is clear. The US turned a blind eye to China's rapid economic rise in the hope that it would eventually lead to political liberalization. Some analysts even describe this outcome as a Frankenstein monster, a powerful rival whose rise challenges the US influence across the globe. And that experience shapes how US approaches the rising powers, and particularly India. Now, if the US believes the China policy was a mistake, an obvious question arises. Will the US limit the kind of economic opportunities that once helped China rise? One of the major drivers of China's rise was access to Western technology and industrial know-how. Foreign companies built factories in China and transferred knowledge that helped develop complex global supply chains. Today, however, the United States is far more protective of the critical technologies, such as the AI and semiconductors. At the same time, countries and companies are trying to diversify supply chains away from China due to geopolitical tensions and supply disruptions. This is often known as the China Plus One strategy. India hopes to benefit from this shift, but India's rise may not follow the same trajectory as that of China's. India's geopolitical position is also very different. Unlike China, which positions itself as a challenge to the US-led global order, India follows a policy of strategic autonomy. India cooperates with the US on forums such as Quad and also participates in the groupings like the BRICS. This allows India to engage with multiple power centers while maintaining its independence in strategic decisions. In contrast to China's manufacturing-driven model, India's growth is already visible in services and technology. India's strength lies in human capital. Indian professionals lead some of the world's most influential tech companies today, including the Alphabet and Microsoft. In that sense, while China rose through hardware and factories, India is increasingly rising through software, services, and human capital. India also possesses another advantage: its domestic market, one of the largest consumer markets in the world. Access to that market itself acts as a strong incentive for countries to deepen economic cooperation with India. The United States, therefore, wants to cooperate with India, but at the same time, it wants to avoid creating another strategic rival. In other words, the US would prefer a strong yet dependent India. The United States may believe that it made a mistake by helping China integrate into the global economy. But history rarely repeats itself in the same way. India's future will not be shaped by other countries' mistakes. It will be shaped primarily by our own economic choices, institutions, and strategic decisions. So, the real question is not whether the United States would repeat the same mistake. The real question is whether India can define its own path to global power in an increasingly competitive world. What do you think? Do let me know your views in the comments. If this video added value, consider liking the video and subscribing to Shubhi Speaks. Happy learning!